In a small town in the north, renowned for its coal mining industry, my family had lived for generations, working in the mines. My father spent his entire life as a coal dust transporter, a sorrowful-sounding title that accurately reflected the harsh reality of labor here. Yet, he named me Liam Tai, hoping I would live a different life, escaping the grim existence beneath the mines. Though my father placed his faith in the meaning of the name Tai Bai, a pseudonym of a great poet, it brought me no particular inspiration. From an early age, I struggled with my studies, only excelling in natural sciences, while literature was a disaster. My father fell ill with pneumoconiosis, and our family's meager savings quickly dwindled due to his medical treatments. I only managed to finish 11th grade, then had to drop out to earn a living. My father often sighed, lamenting the fate that forced him to pass this trade on to me, though he secretly wished I wouldn't follow the path of a miner. But in the end, I still had to set aside my dreams and accept the life of a miner from a young age. That's how life in the mine began for me. I never imagined that on my very first descent into mine area number, destiny would unfold a terrifying ordeal. The strange events I experienced not only left me with a haunting terror, but completely overturned the way I perceived this world. After a simple training course, I officially started my duties. My excitement vanished the moment I stepped into the elevator to descend into the mine. The mine where I worked was 1,000 meters deep. The transport elevator, called a lifting cage, felt more thrilling than a high-speed elevator. In just a few minutes, it took us to the bottom. The descent was so fast that my stomach churned, feeling as if it were turning inside out. As soon as I stepped out of the cage, I bent over, vomiting uncontrollably without even a chance to look around. A few veteran miners standing nearby watched me and burst into laughter. "Done throwing up? Drink some water. It's not even mealtime and you've already thrown up your last meal. Where will you get the strength to work?" Foreman Chu said to me, half joking, half serious. I wiped my mouth, drank some water, and tried to regain my composure. While rubbing my stomach, I looked around. The passageway we were standing in was about 2.5 meters high. The dim light from our headlamps intensified the cramped and gloomy feeling. Railway tracks stretched into the darkness, disappearing endlessly. Foreman Chu led everyone deeper, towards our assigned mining point. Our team consisted of 6 people, each with their own distinct personality. Foreman Chu was around 40, his face angular and dark, as if covered by coal dust for a long time. The team included 2 brothers, Feng Nai and Feng Thuan. Feng Nai was quiet, stern, and older than Feng Thuan, who always maintained a pleasant smile. Old Ma, the oldest in the team, was over 50 and always had a relaxed expression, even when I was vomiting. He just sat silently, resting. The last member was Zhang Huan, a talkative young man who paradoxically was the first to throw up everything. "Did you wet your pants, kid?" Old Ma joked. Foreman Chu shined his light onto Zhang Huan's pants. Indeed, they were soaked. Zhang Huan's face turned pale, and he stammered awkwardly, "No, it's not that, it's probably just sweat." Old Ma laughed loudly. "That's definitely kid pee, you're still a child, aren't you?" "Yes, I'm still a child, but I'll earn money to get married," Zhang Huan retorted, his face flushed. Foreman Chu merely snorted, while Feng Thuan kept his gentle smile. "Take off your pants," Foreman Chu unexpectedly ordered. Zhang Huan quickly clutched his pants, his face panicked. "No need, I'll take care of it myself." Foreman Chu chuckled faintly, then walked on with his lamp, not bothering to argue further. The rest of the team quickly followed. The passageway grew narrower, and the air became more suffocating. I felt my breathing becoming heavier. "Don't worry too much. The deeper we go, the more dangerous it gets, but as long as we follow safety procedures, there's nothing to fear," Foreman Chu said, patting my shoulder, his voice serious yet encouraging. He nodded, but I was not entirely satisfied. Our mine was originally just a small one, yet everyone acted as if it were a place to find black gold. Propaganda always emphasized that safety was paramount, but in this dense darkness, compared to gold, human lives seemed meaningless. The mine network was intertwined like a spiderweb, but the veteran miners moved through it familiarly, knowing every path. The rumbling of the coal cutter echoed. Finally, we arrived. It was then that I understood Foreman Chu's earlier instruction to take off your pants. Before me was an unbelievable sight. Dozens of people, their backs bare and white from the heat, had taken off all their clothes, wearing only shorts. They bent over, using shovels to scoop up blocks of coal cut by the machine and dump them onto conveyor belts. A team usually had about 30 people, divided into small groups of 5 to 6. Each team's output was calculated separately. The coal cutter's blade spun continuously, slicing chunks of coal from the mine wall. Foreman Chu, Feng Nai, and Feng Thuan began to take off their pants, while Zhang Huan and I stared at each other in confusion. What are you still afraid of? You weren't even embarrassed about wetting your pants, so what's there to fear now? This was the first time I heard Feng Nai speak, his voice slightly sarcastic. Hearing that, Zhang Huan quickly unbuckled his belt, preparing to take off his pants. Feng Thuan looked at him, chuckling. I'm too hot, I'll take them off later, Zhang Huan said awkwardly. Old Ma, stop staring, take off your pants and get to work, Foreman Chu urged. Feng Thuan couldn't help but laugh, covering his mouth with his hand as if amused by a shy girl. While I was still confused, not understanding why Feng Thuan laughed, Old Ma's actions caught my attention. He stopped, looking around as if it were his first time in the mine. The other miners also found Old Ma strange. Someone who had worked for so long, yet seemed so disoriented. Old Ma approached Foreman Chu and whispered, I feel like something isn't right. Hearing him, I involuntarily tensed up. My father always warned me that when working in the mine, caution must always come first. If anything felt unusual, I must never be complacent. Experienced miners who survived major accidents all recounted that before disaster struck, they felt something was off. While I was still pondering, Old Ma stepped closer to the mine wall, placing his hand on it. Water is seeping out, he said. Foreman Chu quickly rushed over to feel the wall. Water seepage is often a sign of collapse. Old Ma, what are you talking about? I don't see any water, he said, with a hint of irritation in his voice. Old Ma didn't respond, just shook his head. It's strange, I have a bad feeling. Hurry up, take off your pants and get to work. All of you, if you work this slowly, when will you finish today's task? The team leader shouted from afar. Get to work now. Anyone who doesn't perform well today will settle scores later, Foreman Chu bellowed. Old Ma continued to shake his head. I'm not working today, I have a really bad feeling. If you don't work, I will, Feng Nai retorted, his voice cold. If we don't finish today, will you pay me? Feng Nai clearly wasn't going to back down. Fine, I'll pay, I accept, Old Ma said, his face stern. Damn it, what are you talking about? Feng Nai lunged forward, yelling angrily. What are you trying to do? Chu Hai An glared at Feng Nai. Wait until you're a foreman before you raise your voice. Feng Nai stopped, his face still full of resentment, but he clearly held Foreman Chu in awe. With his quick thinking and skill, Chu Hai An not only worked efficiently, but also earned the respect of everyone on the team. Although Feng Nai was somewhat aggressive, he dared not act excessively in front of Chu Hai An. Knowing that Old Ma absolutely refused to work, Chu Hai An signaled the team leader to report the situation, then gathered the group in a corner. After briefly explaining the task, Chu Hai An pulled Old Ma aside and asked him thoroughly what he was worried about. It seemed Old Ma feared that explaining in front of everyone would cause panic, so he recounted the truth. Meanwhile, Zhang Huan, having just taken off his pants, ran over, clutching them awkwardly. Hey, Old Ma, what's going on? We see you as an elder uncle. Just tell us clearly, don't hide anything, Chu Hai An said, his voice softened to encourage Old Ma. Old Ma pondered for a moment, then looked up and replied, I feel like something isn't right. The coal and earth here are very strange. Chu Hai An frowned. We just passed through an area with a lot of moisture. It's normal to feel damp like this occasionally. Old Ma didn't answer, just stared intently at Chu Hai An for a moment, then lowered his head in silence. Old Ma, do you smell something? Feng Thuan suddenly asked, his voice gentle but somewhat effeminate. Old Ma trembled slightly, immediately looked up at Feng Thuan, his eyes sharp. The others also turned to look, making Feng Thuan a little embarrassed as he quickly pulled down his shirt to cover his pants. What do you smell? Old Ma asked again, his voice grave. I'm not sure either, Feng Thuan replied, his face showing a hint of confusion. What the hell is going on? Chu Hai An shouted, unable to conceal his irritation. The atmosphere in the group suddenly became suffocating, causing everyone to instinctively look towards the distance where other miners were diligently shoveling coal amidst the dim mine lights. The sight of black coal interspersed with their pale skin looked like a grotesque painting. I remember when I was a child, Zio Kwan often took me up the mountain to pick wild apples. There was an apple tree growing right on a grave. The apples on that tree were the sweetest, most delicious. Feng Thuan suddenly recounted, his eyes lost in memory. What nonsense are you talking about? Feng Nai snapped. Go on, tell the whole story, Chu Haiyan encouraged gently. Back then, near the grave, there was a new tomb. We saw fresh wreaths placed there. We lit a match, burned the wreaths, then played around, even pulling out the entire wreath. When we pulled, the soil on the grave sank and the coffin was exposed. You really pulled it out? Chu Haiyan asked, narrowing his eyes. Feng Thuan nodded. The wreath was only half covered by the soil. We pulled too hard, causing the soil to fall away, revealing the coffin underneath. The soil was shallow, and the coffin was buried so lightly that just a strong tug exposed it immediately. What did you do then? Zhang Huan asked curiously. The coffin opened, and a very strong smell wafted out. That was the smell of a decomposing corpse, Feng Thuan said, his voice trembling slightly. Old Ma nodded, muttering, Yes, that's the smell of death. Yes, the smell of death, Feng Thuan confirmed. I'll never forget that smell, and now I smell it here. Old Ma's face was tense. He looked around once, then said gravely, This is truly the smell of death. Something is very wrong. Hearing Old Ma, Chu Haiyan didn't reply, while Feng Nai let out a cold laugh. What's there to smell? That kid just peed. Why are you smelling that? The ventilation here is so good, how could there be any strange smell? I suddenly realized the problem. Feng Nai's words sent shivers down my spine. I knew that in a mine, ventilation was extremely important. The tunnel needed to be supplied with enough fresh air to ensure miners could breathe and to dilute toxic gases and dangerous coal dust. From the moment I entered the mine, I had felt short of breath. At first, I thought it was due to the gloomy environment and my initial stress of working underground. But now, remembering Zhang Huan's urine, which clearly had a strong odor, it could be related to a ventilation problem, causing gases and smells to accumulate and not escape. Let's move to another mining area, Chu Haiyan said. Change areas, how will we earn a living? Feng Nai objected. Chu Haiyan stared at Feng Nai. If you don't want to go, then stay. Feng Thuan will come with us. Hey, Chu Haiyan, do you think you're the foreman so you can do whatever you want? Miners have to risk their lives to work. If you're afraid of death, how will you earn a living? You tell me to go here and there, but I won't listen. Feng Nai said, clutching his shovel tightly, his eyes fierce. Foreman, it does smell a bit strange here, but I think deeper inside it's fine. Miners just have to understand that. Listen to the foreman. Let's finish today's task. If there's any deduction, take it from my salary. Feng Thuan spoke up, trying to mediate. I'm not going anywhere. Whoever wants to go, go. Feng Nai, seemingly losing his mind, raised his shovel as if to strike someone. Brother Feng, we're all poor, working to make a living. It's not worth fighting over this. Zhang Huan chuckled awkwardly, trying to de-escalate the situation. I secretly gripped my shovel, mentally preparing myself. If Feng Nai attacked, I would stop him to prevent anyone from getting hurt. Who are you to talk to me? A kid whose hair hasn't even grown in, talking big to an elder. Feng Nai yelled at Zhang Huan. You say my hair hasn't grown in enough? All right, let me show the whole team if I have enough hair or not. Zhang Huan put his hands on his hips, stood tall, and spun around as if performing. Zhang Huan's actions made the entire team burst into laughter, easing some of the tension. Zhang Huan, encouraged, laughed loudly and continued to spin. Suddenly, he froze, his mouth agape, eyes staring straight ahead as if he had seen something unbelievable. Following his gaze, we looked towards the mining area. That area should have been bustling with dozens of naked workers shoveling coal hastily. But now, the scene before us was strange. Everything was silent, not a sound. The coal cutter had stopped, the transport vehicles were motionless, and there was no sign of anyone. Why is it suddenly so quiet? Where did everyone go? Feng Thuan asked, his voice filled with fear. No one answered. We hadn't even noticed when the other miners left, nor were there any signs indicating their departure. Zhang Huan sat on the ground, muttering, "Ghosts, it must be ghosts. Where did everyone go?" "Don't worry, they probably just moved to another mining area. Follow me. If anything happens, we'll deal with it together," Foreman Chu said. The group nodded, reluctantly following. I secretly gripped my shovel, my heart filled with unease. Upon arrival, the miners' clothes were gone, and there was no one in sight, but there were clear signs that they had left in a great hurry, leaving behind their tools and unfinished piles of coal. Chu Hai-an walked to the coal cutter, touching its engine. It was ice cold. A heavy feeling in his heart made his face turn pale. I noticed Chu Hai-an's expression, and my heart sank. Despite trying to remain calm, I couldn't hide the rising fear within me. 10 minutes earlier, before we stepped into the corner to talk with the other miners, the coal cutter was still rumbling. Yet now, both the machinery and the area were silent, even the cutter was cold. What the hell was happening? "Don't dawdle, let's go. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out as we go." Old Ma's voice was slightly trembling, clearly tense. "How strange, I'm not afraid of anything. If we go, we go." Feng Nai replied coldly, his voice full of defiance. "Brother Feng, what are you talking about? What accident? Our mine hasn't had any accidents for 267 consecutive days." Zhang Huan tried to reassure, but his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "HMPH, whether there's an accident or not, will be the ones to know best," Feng Nai said, looking at Chu Hai-an meaningfully. "All right, old Ma is right. Most importantly, we must go back the way we came." Chu Hai-an didn't respond to Feng Nai, only calmly issued his instruction. "Then let's go." Zhang Huan threw his shovel to the ground, intending to go empty-handed for lighter movement. "Take your shovel?" Old Ma suddenly yelled, his voice full of authority, making me feel a strange force from him for the first time. "This thing might just save your life when you need it." Zhang Huan flinched, quickly picked up his shovel, and clutched it tightly, looking comically sad. All 6 of us regrouped, retracing our steps along the old railway tracks to return. "Foreman, is there a phone here? I want to try calling," I asked. "Oh right, how could I forget?" Chu Hai-an slapped his thigh, looking as if he had just remembered something important. "Wait a moment, let me try." In the mine, there were 2 fixed phones for external communication. They were encased in explosion-proof material. Mobile phones were strictly forbidden here, as even a small spark could be dangerous. Chu Hai-an picked up the phone and dialed the contact code. We leaned in to listen, but he only shook his head. The phone emitted 2 beeps, then only static echoed back. "Hello, hello," Chu Hai-an called twice, but only static came from the other end. "This phone must be broken. Try the other one," Zhang Huan suggested. I suddenly had a premonition that the other phone wouldn't work either. Chu Hai-an switched to the other phone, but the result was identical, 2 beeps, then static. "The lines cut again. This happens sometimes," Chu Hai-an muttered, putting the phone back in its place. I looked at the phone, a surge of anxiety rising in my heart. I secretly hoped someone would answer, but all hope vanished when there was no signal. "It's probably not good news," Feng Nai muttered, full of sarcasm. "Feng Nai, watch your words. We're all veteran miners here. Who doesn't know the seriousness of the situation? Don't scare everyone anymore," Chu Hai-an yelled. "I'm not scaring anyone. If something happened, those people should have sounded the alarm before running away themselves. What a bunch of bastards," Feng Nai shouted, his face full of anger. "Running away so fast they didn't even remember to put on their clothes," Old Ma retorted, leaving Feng Nai speechless. Suddenly, a phone rang. Everyone jumped. The person closest to the phone quickly picked up the receiver. A voice, full of pressure, echoed from the other end as if whispering right into his ear. "Go back. Be careful, Old Ma." Old Ma hadn't even understood what was happening when the phone crackled again. Chu Hai-an called out, "Hello," twice into the phone, but only received static. Feng Nai stepped forward, snatched the phone, and put it to his ear, but only heard static coming from the receiver. "Did you hear anything?" Feng Nai asked, his eyes wide. "I didn't hear anything, just like you," I replied, glancing at him. "You kids don't understand anything. Scared out of your wits, Old Ma sneered, looking dismissive. Liam Tai, did you hear anything? He asked me. I opened my mouth to speak, but swallowed my words. I didn't hear anything, probably just static. I glanced at Old Ma, realizing he was secretly observing me. A sense of unease suddenly welled up in my heart. I felt that Old Ma seemed to know something he wasn't saying. Someone who always maintained an evasive attitude like him was now willing to confront Feng Nai to defend me. This was truly suspicious. All right, focus. We have to go back. We'll talk everything over once we're up there, Chu Hai An ordered. Foreman, maybe we shouldn't go back, Zhang Huan said, his voice close to tears. It's so mysterious, I'm not afraid of anything. I just think Feng Nai's words earlier were worth considering. Anyway, we should pay attention to our surroundings. Let's just go forward for now. Everything will be clear later, Chu Hai An added, his voice calm, seemingly not wanting everyone to panic. No one mentioned the machinery suddenly stopping anymore. We walked in the dim light of our headlamps. I kept an eye on Old Ma, the phone call's warning echoing in my mind. Be careful, Old Ma. Where did that call come from? Who was speaking? Why did they mention him? These questions lingered in my head. Old Ma walked steadily, not slowing down at all. Chu Hai An led the way, and I was at the very end. Occasionally, I turned back, only to see pitch-black darkness, not a single light. After about 10 minutes of walking, the path ahead was suddenly blocked by a large pile of collapsed rocks and earth. It collapsed, Chu Hai An shouted. A tunnel collapse, also known as a roof fall, occurs when rock layers in the mine lose balance due to excavation. Usually before a collapse, there are signs like falling dust or rolling debris, but this time, there were no signs at all. It just collapsed suddenly. The mine we were working in was deep within a coal-rich area, reinforced with hydraulic pillars to prevent collapse. Yet, unexpectedly, an incident still occurred. Unbelievable, those bastards didn't leave any warning and just ran away. Feng Nai cursed, grinding his teeth. In my heart, I secretly felt relieved. Though in danger, at least we had a clue about the situation. At this moment, I felt things were not as terrifying as they initially seemed. Except for Feng Nai, who was still furious, we all used our headlamps to shine on the collapsed debris, trying to find a gap to pass through. While shining the light, I noticed glittering fragments in the debris, like crystals, resembling coal essence. Coal essence, Chu Hai An said, bending down to pick up a piece and examine it under his headlamp. Coal essence, also known as coal jade, is a high-grade coal with metallic luster and fine texture, often used for decoration or artistic products. I've worked in mines my whole life and never seen coal essence appear in this area. Why is it here now? Old Ma asked suspiciously. Chu Hai An approached, picked up a piece of coal essence, and examined it closely. We all moved closer, discovering a small hole inside this piece of coal essence, as if something had hollowed it out from within. Foreman, look, Feng Thuan shouted, his voice trembling. The headlamps shone towards the pile of debris where countless small snakes were crawling out from the coal essence fragments. These small snakes had previously been encased in the coal essence blocks, but when the earth and rocks collapsed, the blocks shattered and the snakes crawled out. We looked at each other, no one believing what we were seeing. These small snakes were about the size of chopsticks, about 1.5 times their length. At first glance, they looked like large worms. They were attracted by the light from our headlamps, and a few had already started crawling towards us. These snakes are like moths. They seem to like light. Should we turn off our lights? Feng Thuan suggested. If we turn off the lights, how will we see anything? Chu Hai An objected. I think this type of snake has very poor eyesight, but they are attracted by light. Also, perhaps they use heat sensors to perceive their surroundings, I added. Everyone turned to look at me. Oh, you must have studied biology, huh? I forced a smile in response. A few small snakes had crawled to within 2 meters of us. In the light of our headlamps, they were clearly visible, but there was something strange. These snakes were not like normal snakes. On their small triangular heads grew something like a horn, about half a knuckle long. They flicked their tongues and moved quickly. From a distance, they looked like snakes, but they were much stranger. While we were talking, a snake had crawled to Zhang Huan's foot. Suddenly, it leaped like an arrow, directly at his eye. Zhang Huan panicked and retreated, but it was too late. The snake's sharp horn embedded itself directly into his eyelid, but didn't pierce through, stopping just outside. Old Ma quickly grabbed the snake's tail, but it immediately turned its head and stabbed its horn into his arm. Half the snake's body burrowed into his arm like a giant leech. Blood flowed like a stream. Old Ma tried to grip the snake's tail tightly, but its slippery body made it impossible for him to pull it out. The snake twisted its body violently, writhing, making it even harder to handle. Everything happened in just a few seconds, leaving all of us bewildered. At this moment, Feng Nai rushed forward, grabbing a small knife from somewhere, and quickly made a cut along Old Ma's arm. The snake was cut in half, one half still clinging to Old Ma's arm, the other half still deeply embedded, continuing to writhe and try to burrow deeper. "Is this a leech or a snake after all?" Zhang Huan stammered, his face pale. Zhang Huan's words reminded Chu Haiyan of how to deal with leeches. He vigorously patted the swollen part of Old Ma's arm. Usually, if you try to pull a leech out, it will cling even tighter, even breaking in half, with the remaining part very difficult to remove from the skin. Therefore, the most effective way is to pat it hard to make the leech hurt and withdraw itself. After 5 or 6 hard pats, the swelling on Old Ma's arm subsided. "Give me the knife," Old Ma said to Feng Nai. Feng Nai handed him the knife. Old Ma cut the wound and used the tip of the knife to hook out the remaining body of the snake. The snake was dead, but its horn was as sharp as a triangular blade. Clearly, this horn had pierced Old Ma's arm several times. Before we could understand what was happening, we discovered another swarm of small snakes crawling towards us. It was then that we realized these snakes regarded us as prey. Old Ma tore off half his sleeve and tightly wrapped the wound to stop the bleeding. "Foreman, run!" Zhang Huan cried, tears streaming down his face. Chu Haiyan looked at us, his eyes filled with hesitation. This area had many interconnected tunnels, but only one path led out. The others were dead ends. "Let's go back the way we came," Chu Haiyan finally decided. "First, we have to get out of here, then we'll figure things out." "Wait," Old Ma suddenly said, his face grave. "Follow me." Without waiting for our reaction, he darted forward. Though over 50, his running speed was as fast as a young man's. Zhang Huan immediately chased after him, as if clinging to a final hope. We hesitated for a moment, then also ran. The dark mine echoed with the hissing of the snakes crawling behind us. We ran for about 5 minutes to a junction in the tunnel. Old Ma suddenly turned into a small tunnel, surprising us. "Old Ma, wait," Chu Haiyan called. Old Ma stopped, turned his head and said, "Hurry up, I'm saving everyone." "What are you saying? If something's wrong, explain it clearly," Chu Haiyan said sternly. "Everything will be clear, but right now, the only way is to follow me," Old Ma said, his eyes mysterious. "What is happening here?" I involuntarily asked. "It's related to Old Li's death," Feng Thuan blurted out. Zhang Huan immediately took a step back, stammering, "Old Ma, you're not going to lead all of us to our deaths, are you?" Old Ma narrowed his eyes, scanned the surroundings, then replied, "Following me isn't the best option, but there's still a chance to live. If we go back the way you suggest, we'll surely die." "Maybe we're just running in circles to avoid the snakes, waiting for rescue from outside," I said, suddenly thinking of the earlier phone call. My unease towards Old Ma lessened somewhat because of it. "Rescue," Old Ma exclaimed. "Kid, do you think this is a TV show?" "So what if it is?" I replied. "The mine collapsed, someone from outside must come to rescue us." "That's right, Old Ma. We just need to buy time, avoid these snakes. Someone will definitely come to rescue us," Zhang Huan interjected. Old Ma tilted his head, listening, as if calculating how long it would take for the snakes to approach. "Firstly, there's something very strange about this collapse. Normally, if an entire mine collapses, the whole thing comes down, but this time, only a section collapsed near the entrance. Secondly, this mine is so deep. It's not easy to get in from the outside. Did you see anyone passing that way?" "They probably ran away," Feng Nai said. Chu Haiyan shook his head. "Old Ma is right, this is very strange. I see you all just listened to this and that, getting nowhere. If it collapsed, every path is a dead end. If you want to live, you have to keep moving forward as far as possible," Feng Nai snarled. "So what do you plan to do?" Chu Haiyan couldn't help but ask. "Wait for rescue," Feng Nai had just finished when Zhang Huan quickly interjected. Yes, we should wait for rescue. Except for Zhang Huan, the others merely shook their heads slightly, smiling bitterly. Based on the collapse we just saw, it happened very quickly. This is just a small mine, no one cares about rescue. They might even cover up the incident so no one knows an accident happened, Chu Haiyan said. Hearing that, Zhang Huan sat on the ground, muttering, I'm not married yet, and my parents are at home. I don't want to die. The sound of snakes crawling grew closer, a rustling noise echoing in the space, making everyone's hair stand on end. If you don't go, I'll go myself, Old Ma said, his voice decisive. Zhang Huan, wiping away tears, stood up and quickly replied, Old Ma, I'll follow you. If you save me, I'll treat you like my parents and be filial. Chu Haiyan, Feng Nai, and Feng Thuan, though saying nothing, silently followed Old Ma, seemingly having decided to choose this path. Kid, trust me, Old Ma turned back and said. My reason told me not to trust him, but the warning in the phone call echoed in my head. Nevertheless, I couldn't leave the group, so I followed. Old Ma led the way, intentionally slowing down to listen for any movement behind, but there was no sound other than our footsteps. It felt like a massive conspiracy was engulfing everything, and it would all unfold tonight. I remembered what the veteran miners said. This place had experienced major accidents that were covered up, and the unfortunate victims still lay somewhere beneath this earth. The moment the small snake lunged at Zhang Huan's eye, Old Ma's reaction was frighteningly fast. He grabbed the snake's tail with practiced ease, as if he had known beforehand. Perhaps he understood these creatures well. I looked at Feng Nai. His hand was clutching a knife. Why did he carry a knife? What was he preparing for? The rustling suddenly stopped. I realized I no longer heard the snakes, but if it wasn't snakes, what was that sound? Do you smell anything? Feng Thuan asked, his voice slightly trembling. Mushroom smell, Chu Haiyan replied. We all shone our lights on the wall. The surface of the wall was covered with large mushrooms, emitting a strong fragrance. The mushroom caps were as big as fists. These mushrooms sent a chill down my spine. These mushrooms are really creepy, Zhang Huan said, trying to pull a mushroom from the wall. But when the mushroom detached from the wall, an entire thin layer of earth peeled off, revealing a sight that made my legs weak. Behind that layer of earth, dozens of human bodies were buried, completely covered in mold. Thud, thud, thud. The corpses fell from the wall to the ground. I estimated there were 30 to 40 bodies. Zhang Huan screamed, rolling and running away, not daring to look back. Are these really people? Feng Thuan cried out in horror. I gathered all my courage and shone my headlamp back on the bodies. It was then that I realized the mushrooms had grown through their bodies, turning them into a source of nutrition. What do you mean turned into? This place is cold. It's normal for these bodies not to decompose. Mushrooms growing on corpses are even considered tastier, aren't they? Didn't you once eat apples that grew on a grave? Feng Nai scoffed. His words made me nauseous. Zhang Huan couldn't help but bend over and vomit. Although they were brothers, Feng Nai always treated Feng Thuan harshly, as if they were mortal enemies. I didn't pay too much attention to that. My eyes continued to scan the bodies. They lay scattered everywhere, emitting no foul odor, perhaps because the mushroom smell overpowered it. Look at that person. Feng Thuan shone his light on one corpse. The person was wearing a miner's protective gear, lying face down, their back covered in mushrooms. The head was twisted backwards, the face swollen, and the eyes clouded white. Although the body wasn't decomposed, it was clear this person had been dead for a long time. This death was covered up, Chu Haiyan said, his voice heavy. I don't believe that someone's death could be hidden here for so long. Let Feng Thuan finish speaking, Old Ma interrupted. The group turned to look at Feng Thuan. Is there anything strange here? Old Ma asked, his voice clearly tense. I've met that person before. When did you meet him? Old Ma pressed, and everyone held their breath, awaiting the answer. I'm sure I'm not mistaken. When we went down into the mine today, I saw this person shoveling coal. Today, Old Ma's voice trembled with disbelief. Feng Thuan nodded, confirming. You must be seeing things, Feng Nai suddenly yelled. I'm sure, at that time this person was working right next to us. Feng Thuan raised his voice, trying to prove what he saw. What's happening today is very strange, but how do you recognize this person? Old Ma asked, his eyes full of suspicion. This person has a very large, terrifying scar on their backside. I saw it then, Feng Thuan said. The group's eyes focused on the corpse. Pull down his pants to see, Zhang Huan said to Old Ma. Without a word, Old Ma approached the corpse, used the tip of his shovel to hook the pants and pulled them down. A long scar, like a centipede, appeared on the deceased's backside, just as Feng Thuan described. Old Ma stood silently, while the others nervously stepped back, cold sweat running down my spine, mixed with an itchy sensation on my skin. If this person was indeed the miner we saw 2 hours ago, how could he have transformed into a long-dead corpse covered in mushrooms? Old Ma, I peed my pants again, Zhang Huan mumbled, his voice trembling. Earlier, Zhang Huan had relied on Chu Haiyan, but now he had shifted his dependence to Old Ma. No one laughed at him anymore. This person has been dead for a while, Old Ma affirmed. Feng Thuan, you're not lying, are you? Chu Haiyan asked sternly. In this situation, no lie could be tolerated. Foreman, I swear I'm not lying. If I'm lying, I'll admit I'm a coward. Feng Thuan said, his voice full of injustice. Does anyone else recognize any of these bodies? Old Ma asked. Chu Haiyan suddenly yelled, I don't recognize anyone. None of these people are miners from our team. You don't recognize them, what do you mean? Old Ma frowned, asking again. Even if they were from another team, I should know their faces, but I've never seen any of these people before, Chu Haiyan replied, his eyes full of doubt. Are they all ghosts? Oh God, please protect us and help us get out of here safely, Zhang Huan muttered. Turn the body over and look, Old Ma commanded. The group fell silent. Feng Thuan, Feng Nai, and Chu Haiyan all stared at him. Why do that? Isn't it obvious enough? Feng Nai scoffed, his voice sarcastic. Old Ma, you're really out of your mind today, Chu Haiyan also spoke up. All right, stop arguing. Just do as Old Ma says, Chu Haiyan sighed, trying to rally the group's spirits. Zhang Huan approached a corpse and flipped it over. Suddenly, he screamed, Oh my God, and stumbled back a few steps. We looked at the corpse's face and immediately recoiled. Its eye sockets were deep and empty, as if its soul had just been sucked out. My heart tightened, and I couldn't bear to look directly at the body, turning my head away. But Feng Nai continued to stare intently at the corpse, unable to tear his eyes away. Do you see anyone familiar? Feng Nai asked, his voice cold. I tried to suppress my fear and nausea, turning my head back to look at the body. Although it no longer had eyes from the facial features, I recognized it as Li Lapdong, the captain who used to supervise our work. Li Lapdong, Chu Haiyan shouted. Yes, there's no doubt, it's Captain Li Lapdong. How is he lying here? Feng Thuan mumbled, as if unable to believe his eyes. If I had a cigarette right now, even if it cost me 10 years of my life, I'd say it's worth it, Old Ma muttered, putting his hand to his mouth. Look closely, don't you see something strange? The other bodies are covered in mushrooms, but Captain Li Lapdong's body isn't. Look at the blood around the corners of his eyes, it hasn't dried yet. That indicates he just died recently. Indeed, around Li Lapdong's eyes were clear dark bruises, unmistakable traces of blood. Old Ma, you're truly amazing. Just by looking, you know he just died. I admire you, Zhang Huan flattered. Old Ma raised his head, giving Zhang Huan a meaningful glance, then said, I don't need your admiration. Look at the other bodies. Use your shovel to check them. Except for Li Lapdong, all the other bodies were soft and limp, as if they had been dead for a long time. So what do you all think? Chu Haiyan said, trembling. You mean, besides Li Lapdong, those other people have all been dead for a long time? Old Ma nodded, his face grave. That's right. As for Li Lapdong, he just died not long ago. Feng Nai let out a cold, sarcastic laugh. What a ridiculous story. What mysterious game is this old man playing now? Old Ma didn't reply, just silently looked down at Li Lapdong's body. I also noticed another strange detail. Li Lapdong's body had no mushrooms growing on it, while the other bodies were covered in mushrooms from head to toe. Old Ma, can a dead person still work? Feng Thuan asked hesitantly. Do you hear the snakes? We should go back, Zhang Huan said, his voice panicked. Honestly, I would rather face those strange snakes than stay here. The mysterious deaths of these bodies were unbearable. It's truly strange. Who would have thought of seeing mushrooms in a mine? We learned that mushrooms need sunlight. Chu Hai An shook his head, saying. I immediately explained, mushrooms are decomposers and parasites. Unlike plants, they don't need photosynthesis. They absorb nutrients from decaying matter like leaves or animal carcasses. Old Ma pointed to a body and said, Look, they're absorbing nutrients from these corpses. Maybe mushrooms are even absorbing nutrients from other mushrooms. Feng Nai interrupted, but his sarcastic tone sent shivers down my spine. Don't say that, Brother Feng. You're scaring me so much I want to pee my pants. Zhang Huan said, half joking, but everyone understood he wasn't joking at all. Do you recognize what kind of mushrooms these are? Old Ma turned to ask me. I shook my head. I don't know. I used to help my father raise chickens and grow mushrooms, so I know quite a bit about various types of mushrooms, but I've never seen anything like this. Liam Tai, do you remember picking wild apples on the grave? Fertilizer from human remains is very good, Feng Thuan said. These mushrooms absorb nutrients from corpses. I forced myself to ask. Try to look closely. What kind of mushrooms do they resemble? Old Ma urged. I raised my headlamp and carefully shone it on the mushrooms. The mushrooms growing on the bodies looked as if they were growing from within the body, piercing through the clothing to emerge outwards. The thought that they were parasitic sent shivers down my spine. They resemble wild straw mushrooms from the northeast, also known as extremely rare wild field mushrooms, I realized. Then let's have mushroom chicken hot pot, Zhang Huan joked, swallowing hard. I handed the lamp to Chu Hai An, bent down, and was about to unbutton the corpse's shirt to examine it more closely. But as I bent down, I unexpectedly saw a blurred face appear on a mushroom cap, looking incredibly ghostly. I jumped back, startled, almost bumping into Chu Hai An, who was standing nearby. Everyone immediately adopted a defensive posture, staring intently at the body. I regained my composure, realizing it was just mushroom patterns that looked like a face, but the eerie feeling didn't lessen. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down, then continued to unbutton the corpse's shirt. At this moment, the sight before me was horrifying. Inside the corpse's chest, blood vessels were completely invaded by mushrooms, merging into a strange circulatory system. These blood vessels were still convulsing, as if blood and mushrooms were operating together within the dead body. In that brief moment, I finally understood why the eyes of those bodies had felt so strange to me. Their eyes, though wide open, had no eyelids. Too frightened to hide it, I jumped up, almost snatching the headlamp from Chu Hai An's hand. The light shone directly onto the corpse's face. Their eyes looked bulging because their eyelids had been completely cut off. I frantically shone the light on the other bodies. Except for Captain Li's body, whose eyes had been gouged out, all the other bodies had their eyelids cut off, leaving them forever unable to close their eyes. I ignored the reactions of those around me, collapsing to the ground, my whole body trembling uncontrollably. Liam Tai, what's wrong? Don't be scared, say something. Zhang Huan cried out urgently. Feng Nai was right, I said, my voice hoarse, unable to hide my horror. These mushrooms aren't sucking nutrients from the bodies are sucking nutrients from the mushrooms. Nourishing the dead, Zhang Huan asked, his voice trembling and stammering. Looking at the current situation, it's probably true that they are nourishing the dead. Their eyelids were cut off, clearly so they couldn't close their eyes, forced to watch the path to the underworld, Old Ma said, his face heavy. I turned to look at Old Ma, the words from the earlier phone call echoing in my mind. Liam Tai, how do you know about nourishing the dead? Old Ma asked. I once heard an old story from the Huizhou region. They talked about strange rituals, I replied. Before I could finish, Feng Nai interrupted. You have the mind to tell stories now. Think of a way to get out of here, he yelled. That's right, let's get out of here quickly. Foreman, pull me up, Feng Thuan said, trembling, his voice almost a sob. Chu Hai An didn't think twice, reaching out to grab Feng Thuan, but before he could pull, Zhang Huan shone his light on Feng Thuan and screamed, his leg is grabbed. Everyone panicked and quickly shone their lights downwards. In the light, a corpse's head lay face down on the ground, its head twisted to one side, two long arms tightly gripping Feng Thuen's ankle. "What's going on? These bodies were still earlier. Why are they crawling here now?" I stammered, my heart filled with fear. As soon as I finished speaking, the head of the corpse holding Feng Thuen's leg suddenly lifted. Its two eye sockets were empty, filled only with white fluid. "Lift your leg," Feng Nai yelled. I tried, I can't lift it, Feng Thuen screamed, sweating profusely. "Damn it, living corpses," Zhang Huan shrieked in fear and ran away. The other bodies began to stir. The mushrooms on them withered and fell off, revealing gray-white bodies. Their stiff joints made cracking sounds as they tried to stand up. I was about to raise my shovel to chop the arm clinging to Feng Thuen's leg, but Old Ma immediately stopped me. "Help me set Captain Li's body upright," Old Ma commanded, his eyes sternly fixed on me. Then he rushed towards Captain Li's body. Zhang Huan still stood there, trembling, unable to move. Feng Nai was tense, staring intently at the stumbling, rising corpses, completely ignoring our actions. Chu Hai An pulled hard on Feng Thuen's arm, but the corpse clinging to his leg wouldn't let go. I ran after Old Ma. He had already pulled Captain Li's body into a sitting position. "Carry him on your back," Old Ma ordered. I hesitated, not daring to approach. "You want me to carry him? I'm old, I can't do it," he shouted, placing his other hand on my shoulder, pressing hard so I couldn't refuse. Reluctantly, I pulled Captain Li's arm over my shoulder, carrying his body on my back. His heavy body almost made me fall, but somehow I managed to keep my balance. "Bring him closer to Feng Thuen," Old Ma said, as if urging a donkey. I quickly walked to Feng Thuen. Old Ma followed closely behind. When we arrived, he pulled Captain Li's hand and placed it on Feng Thuen's arm, then placed Feng Thuen's hand to touch Captain Li's hand. The moment their hands touched, the corpse clinging to Feng Thuen's leg suddenly let go and lay motionless on the ground. "Captain Li is the evil spirit of these corpses. They fear him," Old Ma said. His words scared me so much that my limbs felt like they would fall off. "Hold on to him," Old Ma yelled. "I'd rather be bitten to death by snakes than die here," Zhang Huan screamed, rushing away. Chu Hai An tried to stop him, but it was too late. The remaining bodies had stood up, their eyeless sockets staring intently at us as if searching for a path to life, but all were terrified of Captain Li on my back. "These things only know how to find a path to the Underworld. They look at us as a last hope," Old Ma muttered. I didn't dare ask how he knew these things. "So what do we do now?" Feng Thuen asked, trembling. "Go deeper inside," Old Ma said, his eyes filled with determination. "The snakes aren't chasing us, but we can't go back now. Keep going if you don't want to die here." I looked at Chu Hai An, waiting for him to make a decision. "Keep going," he growled, as if ordering himself. After we continued deeper into the mine, we had to pass dozens of standing corpses. No one dared to look directly at them, only glancing and then lowering their heads to walk. With Captain Li's body on my back, the corpses seemed to sense something and slowly moved aside, making way for us. "Wait, wait," Zhang Huan ran after us out of breath. "How dare you be so brave, walking through a pile of corpses?" "If you're a coward, go back," Feng Thuen replied softly, yet with a hint of sarcasm. "I don't want to die here. Staying is better than running around aimlessly," Zhang Huan said, looking around for agreement. "Since we're here, don't be afraid anymore. Life and death are predetermined. Worrying won't help," Chu Hai An said, his voice dry. "That's right, before, we lived as if we were dead. Are we really afraid of death now?" Feng Nai added coldly. "Walk close to Liam Tai. Captain Li is our amulet. The corpses won't dare to approach him," Old Ma ordered. "Amulet, how ridiculous," Feng Nai scoffed. "You're a fool, still arguing at this point," Old Ma said angrily, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Feng Nai said nothing more, but also did not yield, quietly standing up. As he passed Old Ma, his eyes were full of defiance. Old Ma ignored him, turning to us and urging, "Let's go." We lowered our heads and silently continued walking. The corpses standing on either side still stared at us but didn't approach. I carried Captain Li, head bowed, walking past the rows of bodies. By this point, my fear was temporarily suppressed, but after walking a short distance, I felt a chill run down my spine. It felt as if someone had just touched my back. For a fleeting moment, I saw Captain Lee's 2 arms tightening around my chest like 2 steel rings. I was so panicked I couldn't breathe, trying to pull the body off my back, but I couldn't. I screamed in terror, "Lee Lap Dong, he just squeezed me." "What's wrong with you? We've been following you the whole time," Zhang Huan yelled. I heard nothing, only felt the grip tightening. Suddenly, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. Old Ma's voice rang out, "It's all right, calm down." When I turned, I saw everyone standing behind me, their eyes full of doubt. "You were walking very fast. We had to struggle to keep up," Zhang Huan said. "But I swear he just squeezed me," I stammered in reply. "Perhaps you're hallucinating," Chu Hai-an sighed. "We're walking close behind you, we didn't see anything." "Let's put the body down for a moment," Old Ma said. I bent down, slowly releasing Captain Lee's body to the ground. After laying him down, I felt exhausted, slumping to the ground, panting. "What kind of devilish place is this?" Feng Thuan asked, his eyes sweeping around. This place was like a large cave with bizarrely shaped rocks scattered everywhere. "These are demon rocks," Chu Hai-an said, picking up a piece of rock to examine. "I used to work in a demon mine, but I've never seen such pure rocks before." "Did anyone notice where the bodies went?" I involuntarily asked, glancing around. Everyone was silent, their eyes searching the surroundings. "You're too tired and getting confused. You just walked a short distance and already forgot that we left the pile of corpses behind," Zhang Huan said. "How long have we been walking?" I mumbled, still dazed. "Not long," Feng Thuan replied, but his voice was full of unease. "I feel like I just woke up from a strange dream," I said, my eyes looking deep into the rocks. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from afar. Everyone immediately shone their lights towards the sound. We only saw a strange bush protruding from between the rocks, and right beneath the bush, a frog the size of a hand. At a depth of several hundred meters underground, where there should be no life, the appearance of the frog stunned us. The frog looked at us, croaking, "Oop oop," as if challenging us. "How can this be? How can this be? We just saw snakes and weren't scared. What's so strange about a frog?" Zhang Huan said. "I also find it strange. Those snakes earlier were so bizarre, as if encased in fossilized coal crystals and then resurrected. We even accepted that. But this..." Feng Thuan was about to continue when Old Ma interrupted him. "We've seen too many strange things here. Suddenly, something as normal as a frog appears, which is indeed a bit unexpected. Anyway, since you're all here, I don't want to hide anything from you. There's something very unusual under this mine, and it's all related to the fossilized lake above us," Old Ma said, his voice deepening. "Everyone rest for a moment while I explain more clearly. Fear comes from not understanding. Once you understand, you'll be less afraid. Coal mining is not simply random digging. Over time, excavated areas often collapse, forming depressions filled with water. The water is several hundred meters deep and gradually flows to the lowest points. Above this mine is a fossilized lake, the largest natural freshwater lake in the region, surrounded by mountains. This area is north of the Hoa River, with a dry climate and little rainfall. Natural lakes usually dry up, but the fossilized lake is almost completely isolated from the outside world, maintaining a stable water level for decades. Decades ago, this place was known as the hometown of Ha Trak, because its abundant water helped the villagers survive the hungriest years of the 1960s. Although the fossilized lake was full of water, during the summer, the water level often rose, flooding the area south of the lake. Villagers nearby had to move to the mountains during the rainy season, waiting for the water to recede before returning. Gradually, the village was abandoned, and people moved to live on the mountainside. However, the village had a strange legend. No matter how high the water level rose, 2 large graves at the head of the village were never submerged. Villagers said that, water rises 1 foot, graves rise 1 fathom. The 2 graves had existed for hundreds of years, but no one knew since when they had been there. After the water receded, the land around the 2 graves became extremely fertile. Villagers often planted rice in that area, even though they knew planting rice here was a gamble with nature. If there was heavy rain and high water, they would lose everything. But if they were lucky and it wasn't flooded, the harvest was very good. There was a man in the village named Hua Tian who was diligent and resourceful. He planted rice around the two graves. The good soil made the rice grow very quickly. By May, the rice was golden, the ears heavy, as if they would break the stalks. Hua Tian was very happy, thinking that in just a few more days he would harvest. But heaven was not kind. Just as the rice was about to be harvested, heavy rains lasted for many days. The water level of the fossilized lake rose rapidly. The villagers, both happy and envious of Hua Tian, thought he was about to lose everything. But he was determined to harvest the rice, even in the torrential rain. He and his son wore raincoats, carried sickles, and diligently harvested the rice in the fields. The rain grew heavier and heavier, and water flooded the fields as if to swallow everything. His son blamed his father for being greedy, but his hands didn't stop working. When he looked up to remind his father to check how high the water had risen, he discovered his father had vanished. He panicked, thinking his father had been swept away by the water, but the water was still dozens of meters away. He shouted, calling for his father, searching all over the field, but saw no sign of him. 5 days later, at the Hua Tian mine 30 miles away, a tunnel collapse accident occurred. 15 miners were trapped underground. When rescuers dug, they found not 15, but 16 people. The 16th person was an old man no one knew, barely alive but still breathing. That person was Hua Tian. The rescue leader later said, "I've never met anyone like him." The other 15 miners had long suffocated to death, but this old man was still breathing and only spoke one name, Yanbei City. After Old Ma finished his story, each of us found a place to sit. He continued, "For a long time, there have been rumors that beneath the fossilized lake lies a city made of gold. That city is called Yanbei City. It sounds unbelievable, but who knows the truth? Only one thing is clear. Before he died, Hua Tian mentioned these 3 words. That old man must have been babbling before he died, right?" Zhang Huan interjected. "Not necessarily," Old Ma said gravely, then continued, "Hua Tian mentioned Yanbei City, so does Yanbei City really exist?" Feng Thuan asked. Old Ma smiled faintly. "If you think about it carefully, it's not that strange. Perhaps Yanbei City is just an ancient tomb that has been overly rumored. In ancient times, people believed that the underworld was like the mortal world, so powerful figures built their tombs like miniature cities. Then, rumors exaggerated the story, eventually turning it into a legend of a city made of gold." Listening to Old Ma, I just silently nodded, secretly skeptical. How did he know so much? After a moment of thought, I felt even more that he was a profound person, completely unlike the rough and crude appearance he presented when we first met. "I guess you used to grow vegetables in Tai Lai Village, didn't you?" I suddenly asked, testing him. Tai Lai Village was famous for greenhouse vegetable farming. Old Ma paused for a moment, his eyes flashing with surprise. It seemed I had guessed correctly. About 5 or 6 years ago, a stranger came to Tai Lai Village, rented land, and built greenhouses to grow vegetables. This person was very diligent, didn't hire anyone, and did all the work himself. However, the strange thing was that no one ever saw him selling vegetables outside. About half a year later, the stranger disappeared. The curious villagers went to check and found that there were no vegetables grown in the greenhouses, only deep, dark holes dug into the ground. So that person was a tomb raider, using the greenhouse to hide his actions. "That tomb raider must be you, right?" I asked directly. "Yes," Old Ma replied, his voice completely unflinching. His answer left me speechless, not knowing what to say next. The others also looked at each other in bewilderment, but no one asked further questions. "So when did you come here?" Feng Thuan still pressed. "A long time ago, but I didn't come here to dig coal, but to find what I needed to find," Old Ma said, the corner of his mouth curving into a mysterious smile. "What you need is Yanbei City," Chu Haiyan asked, his face slightly tense. Old Ma snorted but didn't look at Chu Haiyan, just smiled without saying more. I noticed a fleeting look of fear on Chu Haiyan's face, but he quickly regained his composure. "So, you deliberately led us here," Feng Nai shouted angrily. "You bastard, are you trying to kill us?" Old Ma narrowed his eyes, a cold smile on his face. "I don't need to kill people for profit. Feng Nai, don't make false accusations. Be careful, or I'll tear your mouth off. What do you mean by that? Feng Nai asked. The outside world is chaotic enough. I don't want to explain anymore. Our meeting here is perhaps fate, but whether you go on or not is up to you. Old Ma scoffed, turning his face away. Have you ever been to Yan Bay City? Zhang Huan asked. Old Ma didn't answer, just nodded coldly. It seemed everyone had anticipated this outcome. No one showed surprise. Let's go back, Chu Haiyan said. Earlier you said not to go back, and now you want to go back. Are you playing games? Feng Nai retorted coldly. If I had a cigarette to smoke, I'd rather live a few years less, Old Ma mumbled, completely ignoring the argument between Chu Haiyan and Feng Nai. I remembered the strange call that warned me to be careful of Old Ma. This tomb raider had infiltrated deep into the ranks of miners, and now it seemed he was targeting Yan Bay City, the city in the legend. Perhaps it was for that very goal that he had disguised himself among the mining team. Old Ma turned to look at me, his face changing to an expression mixed with regret and a touch of sorrow. I didn't evade, just met his gaze, but he turned his head away. This path is blocked. Do you have a way to dig through it? Chu Haiyan asked Old Ma. There are no large tools here. How can we dig? Old Ma replied. Then let's go back. Even if we die out there, it's better than being trapped here like hell, Chu Haiyan said. Foreman, what's going on? Zhang Huan said, his voice almost a sob. Old Ma, who exactly are you? Chu Haiyan asked, his voice cold. HMPH, who am I? I'm no one, Old Ma chuckled faintly. Chu Haiyan was bewildered by his answer, not knowing how to react. Suddenly, I felt a cold draft sweep over me, making me shiver. Everyone immediately fell silent, but clear footsteps echoed from afar. Someone, Feng Nai asked. No one answered. Turn off the lights, Old Ma whispered, commanding. No one argued. The headlamps were immediately turned off and darkness enveloped us. I watched intently towards the direction of the footsteps. About 5 or 6 meters away, a pure white orb, like a floating head, appeared in the darkness. I immediately thought of the eyeless, lidless eyes of the corpses. No one dared to speak, only quickly turned their headlamps back on. At the same time, in the light, about 5 or 6 meters in front of us, 7 or 8 corpses stood silently, their pale eyes staring intently at us. I thought the mushrooms had sucked the nutrients from their bodies, but perhaps their bodies also drew energy from those mushrooms, I said, suddenly realizing a strange detail and voicing my thought. Sounds like battery charging, huh? Feng Thuan replied, his voice trembling. The corpses walked towards us with stiff steps, like old women with bound feet, but a bone-chilling cold radiated from their bodies. Even from a distance, we could clearly feel it. Brother Liam, Zhang Huan said, do you still have that corpse? They seem to be afraid of that corpse. Hearing that, I remembered that due to exhaustion, I had left Captain Li's body behind. Now, when I turned to look at where I had placed the body, I was instinctively horrified. I had clearly left the body there, but now it was gone. Everyone noticed the change in my expression, but no one had time to ask anything because the corpses were still approaching. We split up to search for Captain Li's body, but no matter how we searched every nook and cranny, we couldn't find the body. Damn it, Zhang Huan yelled. Look at their legs. We looked down and saw white bones protruding from the ankles of the corpses, and they were still diligently walking towards us, their empty eyes staring fixedly. Oh, damn it, Old Ma suddenly yelled, his voice hoarse. We were all stunned by his shout, simultaneously freezing in place. In the lamplight, each person's face appeared filled with terror, as if they had become monsters. What's on my back? I asked, trembling. Liam, on your back, there's something, Feng Thuan stammered, his voice full of fear. Zhang Huan collapsed, trembling uncontrollably. I wanted to slowly turn my head, but as I tilted it, Old Ma yelled, I told you not to turn your head. If you turn, that thing will suck all your vital energy. His voice sent a chill down my spine. Something was clinging to my back, but I felt absolutely nothing. Perhaps what Old Ma said about vital energy being sucked was true. Thinking of wolves often placing their claws on their prey's shoulder before biting its neck, I dared not turn my head. But it was precisely because of his warning that I decided not to turn. I slowly bent down to lengthen the distance between my neck and whatever was clinging to my back, and then I saw it, the thing on my back. Captain Lee's empty, dark eye socket seemed to draw in my entire gaze, as if wanting to swallow the whole world. I didn't understand what was clinging to my back, yet I felt absolutely nothing. Suddenly, I sharply twisted my head, then immediately leaned sideways and fell forward. As soon as I fell, I turned my head to look back again, but this time I saw nothing. After the fall, my back hit the hard ground hard, pain so intense I couldn't help but wince. However, just as I regained my senses, a cold hand tightly gripped my ankle. I didn't know when it happened, but one of the reanimated corpses had lunged and clung to my leg. "Pull your leg back," Old Ma yelled. Hearing that, I immediately pulled my leg back with all my might. Old Ma swung his sharp shovel, chopping down at the corpse's wrist. It took great effort for him to sever the hand clinging to me. I scrambled up in horror, trying to forcefully kick away the hand clinging to me, but it clung like pincers. I was about to bend down to remove it when Old Ma pulled me up. "No time, run," he yelled. The group could only rush into the tunnel ahead, not daring to look back. The tunnel, filled with magnesium ore, was about 7 or 8 meters long. I ran ahead, and only when I felt a safe distance was maintained did I stop to look back, and the sight before me sent chills down my spine. Those reanimated corpses were no longer soulless bodies. They were nothing like the zombies we had imagined. They had begun to avoid obstacles flexibly, and the most terrifying thing was that their eyes were not the eyes of an inanimate object at all. I shone my headlamp straight down at the ground, picked up a piece of magnesium ore, and placed it against the bulb. The magnesium immediately ignited, producing a dazzling white light and radiating intense heat, so hot I almost dropped the headlamp. "Are you trying to burn them?" Old Ma turned back and asked. I nodded. "Magnesium can burn them." Old Ma burst out laughing. "Then throw it and run?" He pulled me up, then secretly slipped a piece of paper into my hand. I took it, feeling it was a small piece of paper, but before I could open it, Old Ma grabbed my hand, signaling not to open it now. Then he quickly ran ahead, leading the way. The magnesium fire burned brightly, illuminating the entire tunnel. The dazzling light clearly showed everything around us. We ran as fast as we could, only hearing our heavy breathing echoing in the tunnel. The tunnel wasn't straight but had several turns. After about 10 minutes of running, we realized this section of the tunnel seemed endless, getting narrower and narrower. Finally, it was only wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side. I didn't think this was a normal coal mining tunnel. Suddenly, I felt a gentle breeze brush past my ear. I didn't trust my senses, so I tilted my head to the side to listen again, and indeed, there was wind. Old Ma, who was running ahead, suddenly stopped. "Devil, how can there be wind here?" Feng Nai cursed. About 5 or 6 meters ahead, there was a bend. Old Ma raised his headlamp, shone it, then slowly walked forward. Soon, he disappeared from view. "Crazy, he doesn't know anything and still keeps going." Feng Nai cursed as he walked towards the bend, but as soon as he turned, he let out a piercing scream. "It's no good." Hearing the scream, we immediately became alert and moved forward. Feng Nai, hearing our footsteps, quickly turned back and blocked my path. "I don't see Old Ma anymore." His words completely astonished me. How could Old Ma disappear in such a long tunnel? "The path is broken, ahead is a cliff," Feng Nai continued. We looked ahead, half believing, half doubting. "You guys see for yourselves, but don't push me or I'll fall down there," he said, then cautiously took steps forward. We followed behind, full of suspicion. When we arrived, just as Feng Nai said, ahead was a cliff. About 2 or 3 meters in front of us was a pitch-black void. The headlamps shone down, but no bottom was visible. I picked up a rock and threw it down. In my head, I silently counted the seconds. It wasn't until the 10th second that I heard a dull thud. I estimated the cliff was 500 meters deep. I took Zhang Huan's lamp, stood at the edge of the cliff, and shone it straight down. Looking down, the cliff was shaped like an inverted bowl. If its entire structure was truly that regular, we might be able to slide down the side. "Damn it, why is there such a big hole here?" Chu Hai An said angrily. "Hole, is this a hole?" Zhang Huan wondered. "If the current situation is that the light from our lamps shines at least 200 meters and still doesn't hit the cliff face, then what do you call this?" Feng Nai retorted. "We are hundreds of meters underground. There must still be a bottom somewhere. All in all, this is still a big hole," Chu Hai An said, his voice full of dissatisfaction. It's as if we're inside a giant cup. Aren't we just a small lid placed inside a large cup? I said, remembering the piece of paper Old Ma had given me. Clearly, Old Ma wanted me to make Zhang Huan jump down here. Old Ma led us here and then left by himself. Clearly, he has no good intentions. Feng Nai said indignantly. Look for it, there must be another way he found. Brother, maybe Old Ma slipped and fell, Feng Thuan suggested cautiously. Don't talk nonsense, if he fell he would at least scream, Feng Nai refuted. Master Ma, Zhang Huan called loudly. Shut up, Chu Hai-an yelled loudly. It's pitch black here, who knows what's out there? We stopped. No one dared to believe anything anymore. At a depth of nearly 1,000 meters, anything strange could happen, especially after what we had experienced tonight. No one dared to guarantee anything. Chu Hai-an carefully used his lamp to scan the surroundings, trying to find a path, but both sides were steep like sheer cliffs with no foothold. Liam Tai, do you think Master Ma really fell? Chu Hai-an asked me. I didn't know why he asked, but after a moment of thought, I replied. If Master Ma slipped, unless he fell unconscious, he would have screamed. Could it be that he intentionally left? Zhang Huan suggested. If so, should we go back the old way? Everyone looked at each other anxiously. Remembering the living corpses behind us, no one dared to make a decision to go back. Your suggestion isn't without reason, I said. Then I squatted down, leaning over to touch the surface where we were standing. The ground here was very slippery. Combined with Old Ma's paper, I was sure he had slid down. If this place is shaped like a large bowl, we can slide down to the bottom. Who knows, there might actually be a path down there, I said. Chu Hai-an shook his head. The depth is too great. If we jump down without knowing what's below, it's no different than suicide. Then let's try to verify what's below first, I suggested. I suddenly had an idea. If we threw a headlamp down, we could see what was below. Then I shared my idea with everyone. Feng Thuan seemed hesitant. We only have 5 lamps left. If we lose one, we'll only have 4. Look, Zhang Huan shouted, his voice trembling, pointing ahead. We looked, and not far away, 2 cold lights like 2 floating lanterns appeared in midair. Are those eyes? Without hesitation, I took Zhang Huan's lamp and threw it straight towards the strange lights. The lamp spun in midair, its light illuminating every nook and cranny. We watched intently, afraid to miss any detail. But when the light from the lamp shone on those eyes, we realized they weren't eyes at all. They were just 2 isolated, glowing objects like 2 floating lanterns. Old Ma, Feng Nai yelled. The last headlamp fell and the light went out, but the 2 glowing spots continued to approach. Strangely, these glowing spots moved very steadily, unlike flickering flames. They grew closer and closer. We estimated each glowing spot had a diameter of about 1 meter. Everyone held their breath, not daring to breathe heavily. Damn it, they're fireflies, Feng Nai exclaimed. Indeed, they were clusters of fireflies forming large glowing masses. In the light of our headlamps, we could clearly see the swarm of fireflies about 5 meters away from us. The buzzing sound of their wings echoed in our ears. Why don't these fireflies glow in their abdomens? Zhang Huan wondered. As soon as his words finished, a few detached and flew straight towards Chu Hai-an. Damn it, these aren't normal fireflies. Chu Hai-an panicked, waving his lamp to ward them off. Turn off the lights, I immediately shouted. I realized that the wind had blown them towards us and the light had lured them here. Feng Nai and Feng Thuan obeyed, turning off their lights. Chu Hai-an waved his lamp, trying to repel the insects, but it was too late. Where we were standing was a rock ledge, only about 4 or 5 square meters wide. Chu Hai-an, while dodging the insects, gradually retreated towards the edge of the ledge. Carelessly, he slipped and fell. I reached out, wanting to grab his left hand, but I was a moment too late. Chu Hai-an's desperate scream echoed. His body slid down the bowl-shaped cliff. The light from his headlamp was attracted by the swarm of fireflies, and they flew in the direction Chu Hai-an fell. His screams gradually faded, and the light from his headlamp and the 2 glowing spots grew farther and farther away, finally disappearing into the black mist. The incident happened too quickly. We stood frozen in place, not knowing how to react. Only Feng Nai and Feng Thuan still held lamps in their hands, but they didn't turn them back on. The space was plunged into complete darkness. At a depth of nearly 1,000 meters, without light, there was no ray of hope. Everything seemed to vanish in this darkness. We have to save Foreman Chu, don't we? Zhang Huan broke the silence. How are we supposed to save him? Feng Nai retorted, then turned to me. Liam Tai, can we turn the lights back on now? Wait a moment, everyone stay still. Don't move, I interrupted. In this complete darkness, if we carelessly moved, there was a high chance of falling into the abyss, but turning on the lights would attract the insects again. Liam Tai, are you sure the light attracts those insects? Feng Thuan asked. I was very surprised why Feng Thuan asked such a question. You saw it yourself, what's there to doubt? I replied. But I saw that Foreman Chu didn't fall by himself. Clearly, something pulled him, Feng Thuan replied. Feng Thuan's words made my mind explode. When Chu Hai'an fell, I clearly saw a hand grabbing his leg. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, but if Feng Thuan also saw it, then it was very likely true. I feel like that thing is always following us. These insects are like observers, Feng Thuan said, his voice very low. What insects? I interrupted. I heard Feng Thuan take a deep breath and reply, Tidia insects. Finally, I clearly heard the two words, Tidia. Tidia is the name of a bird I once heard in an ancient poem. Hu enhan kung tidia tine min hisu bak thou ban, kai vo fuang ai, so tidia kat tine truak keen, tram loi ko ki kong the toa huang. Someone fears the Tidia bird. Before it sings, it makes all grasses and trees unable to bloom. I had also heard about Tidia insects in some ghost stories when I was a child. Tidia are parasitic birds that lay their eggs in the nests of other birds and carry their eggs elsewhere. Some legends say that Tidia birds carry their eggs to barren lands where the eggs absorb yin energy from surrounding vengeful spirits, then hatch into larvae called Tidia insects. Before hatching, Tidia insects rely solely on souls to grow. When hatched, they carry the instincts of devils and are considered a species specialized in hunting ghosts. Feng Thuan, how do you know about these insects? I asked again. Although I had heard the name of this insect, I had never known what they looked like. Feng Thuan turned on his light. The dazzling light momentarily disoriented us. Feng Nai raised his hand and slammed it hard on his younger brother's head. Who told you to turn on the light? Feng Nai was someone who liked to talk loudly, but he was actually cowardly, even more scared than Zhang Huan. I understood that, so I said loudly, Feng Nai, this is not the time to scold your brother. Right now, the most important thing is to stay calm. Turning to Feng Thuan, I continued, what's going on? Are you sure about what you're saying? Brother, you're too impatient. If I didn't turn on the light, we would be wandering around in the dark forever. Not to mention, we need light to see our surroundings clearly, Feng Thuan calmly replied. Indeed, he was very sharp. The light from the lamp helped us see the ground and the abyss ahead more clearly. Feng Nai muttered, I'm not afraid of anything, just keep the light on and go. But in reality, he didn't dare to stray far from the group. Feng Thuan, how do you know those are Tidia insects? I asked again. Didn't you see? Those glowing spots are Tidia insects. When they appear, we call them sky ghosts, Feng Thuan replied. His words sent shivers down my spine. He kept repeating the phrase, we, here with a strange tone, but surprisingly, Feng Nai didn't react at all, as if the two brothers were in their own world. And now, everyone look. Feng Thuan reached out and touched the cliff face. I and the others also reached out to touch it. The surface of the cliff was very smooth, feeling like wax. I withdrew my hand and brought it to my nose. If it's wax, maybe it's adipocere, Feng Thuan said chillingly. A wave of nausea rose, and I quickly wiped my hand vigorously on my clothes. Fat in a corpse decomposes into fatty acids and glycerin. Proteins in the body decompose into ammonia. When ammonia combines with fatty acids, it forms fatty ammonium salts, which then combine with water and minerals to create a white waxy substance called adipocere. Why is there adipocere on this wall? Did some corpse climb up the wall and die? I tried to keep my tone light and joked to dispel the heavy atmosphere. The three of them looked at me silently. Feng Thuan shone his lamp on the wall. Everyone, look closely, he said. Oh my God, Zhang Huan screamed, then pulled me back a few steps. A cold current ran down my spine, scaring me so much I couldn't speak. The light from the headlamps shone on the wall, passing through the transparent wall to reveal faces inside. These faces were stacked on top of each other like bricks built into a wall. Each face was tilted back almost 90 degrees, so the entire face looked straight out. Now do you understand how corpse wax is formed? This wall is built with human corpses, that's why there's adipocere. Feng Thuan calmly explained. I noticed Feng Nai staring at his brother, his eyes filled with fear, then quickly lowered his head, trembling. So, do you know why these bodies were brought up here? Feng Thuan asked me. Are they really used to build walls? I asked again, full of doubt. You bastard! Before I could answer, Feng Nai grabbed his brother's collar. Did you bring us here? Feng Thuan's face remained calm, showing no fear. Old Ma brought everyone here, not me, but I'll make sure all of us die in this place. What did we do wrong to die here? Zhang Huan burst into tears, his voice breaking. What did you do wrong? Each person knows in their own heart. Feng Thuan replied coldly, his eyes seeming to pierce through me. Feng Thuan, who exactly are you? I yelled. Feng Nai lowered his head, letting go of his brother's collar without a word. I'm not Feng Thuan. His real name is Than Vu. Feng Thuan said, or rather Than Tiu Vu, he said coldly, completely different from his initial gentle demeanor. No, that's Feng Nai. Zhang Huan stammered, unable to speak coherently. Yes, I am Than Tiu Vu, and you killed my brother, Than Tiu Vu said, his eyes fixed on the other. I know I was wrong. Feng Nai trembled, his voice breaking. Then I will let you die while understanding everything. Than Tiu Vu suddenly grabbed Feng Nai and pushed him into the deep abyss. Zhang Huan and I screamed in horror, trying to stop him, but it was too late. Feng Nai's scream echoed from the deep cliff face before disappearing. Zhang Huan and I immediately retreated, fearing Than Tiu Vu would push us down too. We have no enmity with you. Don't kill us, I said, trembling. No one wants to harm you, but I have to let him die in front of me so he understands that those who do evil will suffer evil retribution, Than Tiu Vu said, then sat down on the ground as if nothing had happened. Want to hear a story? I'll tell you one. Zhang Huan and I looked at each other, then silently sat down in front of Than Tiu Vu. Than Tiu Vu recounted the entire story from beginning to end. 3 years ago, his brother, Than An, left their hometown to work as a miner in Shanxi to earn money to send home to his family. However, after sending money home for 2 months, Than An suddenly lost contact, and there was no further news. Than Tiu Vu had been very close to his brother since childhood. When he learned his brother might have met with misfortune, he resolutely dropped out of college to search for him. Over the next 2 or 3 years, Than Tiu Vu worked in almost every coal mine in Shanxi, hoping to find some clue. He suspected his brother had died in a covered-up mine accident. Finally, heaven did not disappoint him. Than Tiu Vu heard a little information from a small coal mine. A worker there said that Than An had worked at this mine, but then left with a man named Feng Nai to another mine. Following the clue, Than Tiu Vu found the second coal mine and befriended the workers there. Finally, someone quietly revealed to him that Feng Nai had indeed worked there, but his younger brother had died in an accident. Feng Nai then collected compensation money and left to find his next target. This person knew nothing about Than An, but Than Tiu Vu felt there were many suspicious points in the story. Leaving that coal mine, Than Tiu Vu lost track for a long time until another worker accidentally commented that he and Feng Nai's younger brother looked very similar. This comment made Than Tiu Vu realize something. He found out Feng Nai's younger brother's real name was Feng Thuan. It took Than Tiu Vu another 2 years to track down Feng Nai. When he found him, he discovered that Feng Nai had left Shanxi and moved to the North China region. Feng Nai was a hot-tempered and difficult person, but Than Tiu Vu managed to endure and build a good relationship with him. Gradually, Feng Nai began to trust him and finally revealed that a coal mine needed workers, offering high wages but only accepting trusted workers. He promised to help Than Tiu Vu get a job. To prepare, Feng Nai even made Than Tiu Vu a fake ID card under the name Feng Thuan. When he saw this name, Than Tiu Vu understood everything. Than An, Than Tiu Vu's brother, had been taken to work by Feng Nai, then murdered to create a fake scene of a mine accident. Feng Nai, as the deceased's brother, had collected compensation money from the mine owner and then left to find his next target. And then it was Than Tiu Vu's turn. After hearing the story, Zhang Huan and I gnashed our teeth in anger. What a heinous crime! How could he be so cruel? Zhang Huan snarled. Why didn't you report it to the police? I asked. Report to the police? Than Tiuvu scoffed. Without evidence, how would you report it? Moreover, it's been so long, who still cares? Only by my own hands can I get justice. But doing that is very dangerous. He certainly won't let you get away with it, I replied. I know, that's why I'm always cautious. He has tried many times to kill me, but hasn't succeeded. Every day, he takes out his anger on me to hide his true intentions, Than Tiuvu said. I looked at Than Tiuvu, noticing that he seemed to be secretly accumulating strength. His legs clung tightly to the ground as if ready to lunge at any moment. I began to wonder if he intended to harm us. To be prepared, I glanced at Zhang Huan and said, "If we get out of here, I'll protect you, but we need to trust each other." Than Tiuvu chuckled faintly. "Do you think you can still escape? I don't think so." "What do you mean?" I felt my scalp tingle. "This is your first time taking the elevator down into the mine, so you don't know anything." I counted. This time, the elevator went deeper than all previous times. "We are not at a normal level," he said. Before I could understand, Than Tiuvu continued, "We are not at a normal level." He turned on his light. The dazzling light left Zhang Huan and me unable to react. When I realized, I saw Than Tiuvu lunging at me. I instinctively raised my hand to push him away, but he still pulled me down the cliff with him. My back hit a protruding rock hard, and my head slammed down. The intense pain instantly rendered me unconscious. When I woke up, dazzling light still enveloped me. I thought the light came from Than Tiuvu's lamp, so I raised my hand to cover my eyes and slowly opened them. The sight before me was astonishing. I felt as if I had been transported to another world, where strong light shone, but the landscape was desolate and ruined. I realized I was standing in an abandoned stone city. Broken walls lay scattered everywhere. The light only illuminated a radius of 20 to 30 meters. Farther away, darkness enveloped everything, and a blurry stone tower emerged from the black mist. This scene reminded me of the movie A Chinese Ghost Story, when Ning Kaichen entered the haunted house to find Zhao Qian. A hazy mist covered everything, as if surrounded by ghosts and demons. I stood in this weak light, feeling as if I were at the boundary of two worlds. Finally, I understood that I was not in the outside world but deep underground. The ceiling above was not like the blue sky I knew, but like a low stone curtain about 30 meters high, filled with tiny lights. I guessed those were lights from bioluminescent insects, perhaps like the butterfly larvae Than Tiuvu once mentioned. These insects glowed brightly, gathering in large clusters, illuminating the entire space. As I looked around, I remembered falling earlier. If I had truly fallen from that sky ceiling, I would probably have been smashed to death long ago. I began to stand up, looking around to understand the situation. The first thing I wanted to do was find someone to talk to know if Than Tiuvu, who had pushed me down here, was still alive. At that moment, my stomach rumbled. I realized that before falling, I hadn't eaten for 6 hours. I didn't know how long I had been unconscious, but the hunger made me anxious. "You're awake?" A voice from behind made me jump. I quickly turned and saw Old Ma smiling, emerging from the mist. Earlier, I had hoped to meet a familiar face for help, but now, seeing Old Ma emerge from the fog, I couldn't help but shiver. Old Ma sighed as if guessing my thoughts, then said, "I'm not a ghost. I'm still alive just like you." "Are you playing tricks again?" I deliberately spoke loudly. The sound echoed in the quiet space. I hoped that if anyone else was here, they would hear my voice. Old Ma shook his head and chuckled awkwardly. "Here, you still talk about ghosts? Saying such things here easily brings bad luck." "Where is this? What is this place after all?" I yelled. Old Ma looked at me and asked, "What do you think this place looks like?" "An ancient tomb? Perhaps the golden city Yan Bei you once mentioned. At most, it's just a large mausoleum," I said. I felt as if everything around me suddenly became clear. All the previous events seemed to have an explanation. Old Ma smiled bitterly and shook his head. "This place is more than 1,000 meters deep. Who would build a mausoleum at such a depth? Digging down here to bury people would be risking one's own life, wouldn't it?" I thought for a moment. That's right. The coal seam here is deep coal, only recently exploited with modern machinery. If this really is a mausoleum, how could ancient people have dug down here? "Then what is this place?" I asked, a sense of confusion rising again. "If not for gold and silver, why did you go to such lengths to bring us down here?" Old Ma said regretfully, You're smart, you guessed I had a purpose. But you don't need to be too tense. I didn't bring you down here for money, nor for revenge like Than Tiu Vu. My purpose is probably only related to emotion. What kind of emotion? Don't be so vague anymore. What do you want after all? I shouted angrily. Old Ma looked at me, his voice calm. Just think, emotion isn't just romantic love. There's also familial affection, filial piety. Aren't those also emotions? I felt annoyed and yelled, don't beat around the bush anymore. There's no one else here but you, yet you keep saying vague things. What is this place, after all? What are you trying to do? Old Ma looked around, his face very serious, then said, this place is the Underworld. I looked around, wanting to find something that could be used as a weapon to make Old Ma cooperate. After all, what was happening was already confusing enough, and he kept saying things like, this is the Underworld. But I only found a few scattered rocks. You seem to have gone to college, right? Old Ma suddenly asked. I stopped, glanced at him, and replied vaguely, finished high school, then 1 year of college. Old Ma nodded. Then you should be able to understand what I'm about to say. These words sounded full of sarcasm. A man suspected of being a tomb raider, yet acting superior. Before I could retort, he continued, I used to be an associate professor of astronomy at a university in Beijing. I couldn't help but let out a cynical laugh. At first, I thought he was an experienced man, but it turned out he was just delusional. I retorted sarcastically, I'm also a full professor at Tsinghua University. Old Ma chuckled faintly, seemingly unfazed. It's true that you don't believe it. You probably think I'm a tomb raider, right? I didn't answer, just smiled faintly, but he continued. That's right. If I weren't a tomb raider, why would I come in here? But I ask you, where do you think I am? Here is the Underworld. I mocked, then yelled loudly. I'm only in my early 20s, still in the prime of my youth. Why should I die with you? Old Ma didn't answer, just stepped aside and pulled out a tube-shaped device from his clothes that looked like a cannon. It was a type of mine fan, powered by a diesel engine with enough power to knock down an adult. Seeing that item, I immediately became alert, jumping aside to avoid being targeted. Not to attack you, Old Ma gestured with his hand, then vigorously pulled the machine closer. I stood at a distance, scrutinizing him. What's that for? I asked, but my eyes never left his movements. Old Ma inserted a crank into the engine and began to turn it. The engine initially sputtered as if fuel-starved, but after a few turns, it gradually ran smoother. The engine noise became crisp, and the strong gust of wind from the fan began to stir the surrounding mist. Help me pull this, Old Ma yelled, his voice mixed with the engine noise. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to approach. Although I didn't know what he intended to do, at least we were all in the same predicament. Under the powerful blast of the machine, the mist in front of us gradually cleared, and the scene revealed made me tremble so much I almost wanted to kneel. High above, about 10 stories above the ground, human corpses floated in midair. They were spaced about 4 or 5 meters apart, all with limbs outstretched, looking like mannequins inflated with gas. These bodies were near the bioluminescent insects, perhaps the butterfly larvae I had heard Than Tiu Vu mention, causing them to emit a strange white light. And then, amidst that space filled with corpses, a giant black snake appeared, its eyes glowing like headlights. It moved slowly through the air, snatching each body one by one and swallowing them. The scene reminded me of the game Snake on old Nokia phones, but this snake was too large, and its every movement sent shivers down my spine. I felt my whole body paralyzed with fear, my throat dry, only able to emit guttural sounds. Old Ma stood beside me, gently patting my back. Then I couldn't hold it in anymore, bending over and dry heaving. After a while, the engine went silent, the wind stopped, and the mist gradually returned, covering the horrifying scene. I breathed heavily, wiping the sweat from my face, looking at Old Ma and yelling, "What the hell is this place, after all?" "The Underworld," he repeated, his face unchanged. "Don't you believe it now? Stories of encountering ghosts on the road are very common. In those stories, there are often details like characters being strangled by ghosts, being led astray with no escape, or being trapped in a labyrinth with no way out. It seems that when encountering ghosts, humans can only wait to die. But the strange thing is that despite being terrifying, ghosts still have a fatal weakness. They fear the sound of a rooster crowing. The crow of a rooster represents the end of night and the beginning of day, forcing ghosts to retreat. So why are ghosts afraid of roosters crowing? I unexpectedly heard Old Ma's question as he sat down near an old diesel air compressor. He leaned back comfortably, completely unlike his cautious demeanor earlier. At this moment, he seemed strangely friendly. In such a terrifying and dangerous environment, his presence was like a rare ray of light, bringing a sense of security. But I was still suspicious, secretly cursing myself. Wasn't this old man the one who led us to our deaths? Perhaps he wanted to stop us from going deeper, as if deliberately warning us. The story about ghosts fearing roosters crowing is just a myth, isn't it? I impatiently interrupted him. Although I felt he was somewhat approachable, I didn't entirely trust him. Instead, I began to think of my girlfriend. If she knew I was trapped in an underground accident, would she cry hysterically or resolutely wait for me to return? Thinking of this, I unconsciously sat up straight, trying to maintain a strong image, though my heart was filled with constant unease. The old man continued, seemingly oblivious to my distraction. Listen, perhaps ghosts really exist, but they are not what we usually think, he said with a mysterious air. Everything we see is an illusion created by ghosts. I chuckled and replied, no different from Stephen Chow's ghost movies. Do you actually believe that? He shook his head slightly, as if regretfully. If ghosts being afraid of roosters crowing isn't true, then why are there so many stories repeating this detail? Surely, the crowing of a rooster must carry some special meaning. A high-pitched, piercing sound, that's all, I replied, suddenly thinking of my girlfriend's sharp voice. Unexpectedly, my simple answer thrilled him. That's right, a piercing sound, high-frequency sounds. Ghosts are afraid of high-frequency sounds, he said, his eyes lighting up. I felt puzzled by his excitement, but as he walked forward, I began to think about his words. Why did he emphasize high-frequency sounds? He seemed to be looking for something important. Involuntarily, I asked, "Are you looking for your father?" The sudden question made him stop, his eyes red and full of emotion. "Yes, I'm looking for my father," he said in a hoarse voice. "I'm not a tomb raider as you think. My father went missing, and this is the only place I can find him." Then he told me the story of his father, Makeo Rong, a famous grave robber. It turned out his father had once tried to find the tomb of an ancient king rumored to be buried under the lake. But after going in, he never came out. "So how do you know your father was in that tomb?" I asked, full of doubt. "A man named Hua Tian once said he saw my father in Yanbei City," he replied. "But Yanbei City isn't a real city, it's just what ancient people called the resting place of kings. I came here hoping to find him." "But if your father has become a ghost, why are you still looking for him?" I asked, feeling confused. "Because this place is the Underworld," he said, his voice sorrowful. "My father cannot pass on. He's trapped here forever, suffering torment." I listened, my scalp tingling. Yes, I believed in ghosts, but how could all this be explained? The floating bodies in the air, the giant snake, the walking corpses near the magnesium ore, or the strange, blood-sucking creatures in the black coal layer. Old Ma rubbed his head and said, "Zio Liam, others might not understand, but you surely will understand me. I used to be a university lecturer and associate professor." I interrupted him, unable to hide my irritation. He nodded, his face stern, as if giving an important scientific presentation. "Indeed, an associate professor, but that's not important. You try to think, how do you explain everything that's happening here?" I didn't answer. Finally, he offered his explanation. This location was previously a lake, but beneath the lake were layers of metal-rich earth. The lake water and metal ore created a natural cavity. That cavity has the ability to draw in souls. It's like a trap. Everything living that falls down here will mutate over time. That's why you see these strange phenomena. His explanation, though unbelievable, had some logic. I frowned and asked, "So, what are you doing here looking for your father, and why did you drag us down with you?" Old Ma shook his head. "No, I never wanted to turn you into sacrifices in this place." "Bastard," I cursed silently in my head. In this hellish place, anger almost consumed me. Old Ma maintained his strange, saintly demeanor, continuing with eyes full of confidence. "Don't worry, I will free everyone. No one will suffer the fate of a wandering soul here forever." He took a small device from his clothes that looked like an old radio wrapped in plastic. "This isn't a radio, this is a high-frequency transmitter that I built myself. Zio Liam, you're a good kid, I truly don't blame you." Before I could understand what he was about to do, a piercing shriek rang out when Old Ma turned on the device. The sound made my eardrums feel like they were about to burst. The pain was so intense I had to cover my ears tightly, but the sound still seeped into my brain, seemingly tearing apart every thought. When the noise stopped, I saw blood flowing from Old Ma's ears, eyes, nose, and mouth. He looked at me, a serene smile on his face, then slowly fell down, completely motionless. He was dead, or at least showed no signs of life. I didn't know if, according to his theory, that was death or liberation. Turning to look around, I realized I had no other choice. I didn't want to be trapped forever in this mist. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the panic, then turned back to the diesel engine and revved the throttle to maximum. The engine roared, dispersing the mist. In the dim light, I looked up. The giant snake was still writhing in midair, and the bodies were still floating. I turned on the sound transmitter. Sharp, piercing sounds echoed, and at that very moment, all the floating bodies suddenly sprang up as if they were lying on the ground. They turned their heads to look at me, their eyes pale, devoid of any trace of life. I recognized each face, Zhang Huan, Than Tiuvu, Feng Nai, and Chu Haian, but their faces were now distorted, rotten, with expressions of painful hatred. Their empty eyes stared at me as if wanting to tear me apart. Intense, furious screams rang out like a tsunami hitting my eardrums. In the flickering light, I saw them writhing, their bodies contorting as if in a distorted painting by Van Gogh. I wanted to turn off the device, but my hands wouldn't obey. Finally, I threw it away forcefully, but the piercing sound continued to echo. I fell, looking up at the sky. The giant snake writhed violently, torn apart by those very high-frequency sounds. And then, amidst the chaos, I felt a strange sensation, peace. I closed my eyes. I woke up in a hospital. Opening my eyes for the first time, I saw my father, who had spent his life working in the coal mine, his hands calloused and his eyes filled with worry, looking at me. Then I heard from him that an accident had occurred in the mine, many people died, and I was the only survivor. Before I could leave the hospital, a group of people came to meet me and asked about what had happened underground. I recounted everything I had witnessed, meticulously noting every word and detail, but when they finished listening, they just shook their heads and turned to my father, saying, "He's insane." Those people left. My father was silent for a long time, finally speaking. "They found you in the coal mining area, deep underground. If what you say is true, that place is 1,000 meters deep. How could you have escaped from there by yourself?" I smiled faintly in reply. "Father, do you remember I told you about those old batteries I saw down there? They contained sulfuric acid, and around that area, Old Ma also mentioned it was all magnesium ore. Do you know what happens when you mix sulfuric acid with magnesium?" My father's face turned red. He reluctantly admitted, "I'm not good at chemistry, but that stuff can definitely make explosives. I used to make explosives myself." I chuckled, not refuting him, but continued to explain, "Not just explosives. When magnesium reacts with sulfuric acid, it produces hydrogen gas. Down there, it was like a gas tank. I found a waterproof tarp to channel the hydrogen gas into, filled it up, and made a bag. Then I tied the hydrogen bag around myself, using it to float up, just like the blimps we usually see on TV. What do you think, Father?" My father listened in silence, only snorting in reply, "I think you're truly insane. Don't think such crazy thoughts anymore. Here, I brought you a newspaper. Read it to pass the time." I took the newspaper, opened it, and read the front page. A large headline boldly proclaimed, "Coal mine accident. All workers successfully rescued thanks to emergency plan. No casualties." I let out a cold laugh, folded the newspaper, and tucked it into my jacket pocket. In my heart, I had made a decision. I would go to the provincial capital or even Beijing to expose them. I had to bring to light those who had covered up this accident. Those people were truly terrifying, but they were not ghosts. They were the ones who truly made people tremble. Thinking of that, I gradually drifted off to sleep. In my dream, I saw myself returning to that deep, abyssal coal mine. The mine was so deep, bottomless, but even deeper than that was the human heart.